So this is take one of my attempt at doing a video, which I had planned to do in Staten Island, but I never managed to get to do because A, it was cold, and B, everything that was there was changed, so I wasn't like getting back any memories. But I figure if I use my artistic skill that I haven't used in God knows how long, maybe I can come up with some memories here. I've been meaning to do this video for a while, so let's try it. So the first thing I'm going to draw is our old house in Staten Island, which is going to be kind of funny because I'm taking this all from memories of a 10-year-old boy. So we're going to start with the front of the house, which we'll start at 9 there. There we go. Okay. Now, from my remembering of this, my brother was showed me and my younger cousin how to use a magnifying glass with the sun in front of this area. Not particularly the best memory for him because he got in trouble for it because my cousin decided, even after we both agreed we weren't going to do it on our own, he went and did it on his own. I'm trying to remember. Where does this go? I know I want to go that way, but you know what? Yeah, let's go that way. But yeah. Anyway, he showed us that if you point a laser, a magnifying glass, at the sun, and you position it just right, uh, it makes a laser, which burns things, which is how my cousin got in trouble. Because he was burning something he should not have been. Looking for relief. I remember any of this. I do. I'm sure my brother does. But it's funny the things we remember and don't remember. Because time. That looks about right. Like, there's a lot of, I don't know, other things we experience. Like, I vaguely remember them growing vegetables out of this garden also. But that might have been, I might be wrong. I think my mother did at one time try to grow vegetables in this thing. I could be totally wrong. That might be a made-up memory. I remember. Yeah, there was two of them. One was on each side, but there was that. Floor panels would get wider. The closer we got, right? Yeah, that works. I vaguely remember that. There's more than one thing. 3 or 4. Trying to remember when you're not in the best place to remember things. Either way, it was good times. Yeah. That's what I remember. Right? Yep. Remember there was a tree in this one. With it being a big tree. And so the house and about here. About there. And you'd go, there's a side of the house. Yeah. Yep. That's right. Because then it would go that way. And there were these two steps that I remember very vaguely. I remember they were very, the word I'm looking for, awkward. Very awkward steps because I remember people falling down. And not because they wanted to, but because they were just awkward steps. And there were only two steps, I believe. One, two, looks like that. And then there was a door. This led to the only person I remember living in this place was my aunt Lori. She lived there for a little while, I remember that. And then she moved out. But I remember she had a snake also in this apartment. I believe it was a boa. Very cool looking snake. I know that's not the greatest detail, but I remember that. And then there was a space, the door. There was a second door here, but the this was supposed to be the entrances to both of these apartments, I believe, both of these houses, from what I remember. Eventually, there was an older man named Shiki who lived there and knew my grandmother. They were friends. Wonder whatever happened to him. But that's what I remember of the front of the house. Anyway, but remember we get out of the car, and I can't really remember if there was a fence here or if it later happened, but I remember there was eventually, I think there was a blue fence. I vaguely remember somebody having to paint it, probably my brother or my dad. I don't remember. Anyway, there were panels, big panels, because it was like panels on the side of the house. They weren't huge, but they were still there. That's what I remember. I know my dad worked on a bunch of this stuff in this house. Put a lot of work into it. I remember that. He had to do insulation. I remember that too. And that sucked because insulation, if you know anything about uh, fiberglass, makes you very itchy. You touch it. And unfortunately, we were knuckleheads and we were touching it. That's right, because it was under here. It was under that door. I remember that. It was like it wasn't a porch, but it was like a crawl space. I remember doing that. I remember him doing that. I remember my dad doing that. I can't remember what the front of the house looked like, though. I'm pretty sure. Well, I know there's a window here. I know there's a window here. Because this was Ava's room. Remember there was a window there. Right? And then there was another window here. Remember that. Because that was April's room when we were living there. And later became Grandma's room when we moved out. There was also like a canopy thing here. I remember that. Because I always thought, I was like, I bet you can crawl out there and probably get yourself in a lot of trouble. What's that on? On something? Was there a pillow? There was a pillow. I think there was a pillow. Something holding. Oh, obviously it had to be something holding it, but I don't remember if there was a pillar there or if it was just the way. Yeah, part of the house was built. So, yeah, okay. So here was Shiki's house, and here was the bathroom. That's right. And it went into where our living room was. I remember that. And anyway, I think this picture is as done as it can be. I don't remember if there was another window above. I think there was, but I'd have to move back. This is what I remember from being 9. Was this place? We'd go that way, and that would lead to Grandma Ava's and Chris's house. This is the spot where Sean showed us the lasers. I should put it. That'd be fun. That's where Sean showed me and Chris the magnifying glass with the lasers. I think we were burning leaves. We weren't burning bugs or anything. Then Chris got in trouble for burning bugs or something. I don't remember. I know he got in trouble for doing it again after Sean told us specifically not to do it again. And then Sean got in trouble for that too because he showed us. But whatever. Anyway, let's see. So, yeah, you'd go down there and there was a door. So let's do the next section. Still good? Yeah. So you'd walk. Let's see. From what I remember, you turn the corner. We're going to start from this angle here. You turn the corner and you'd walk, and there'd be steps. Now the question is, how am I going to do this? From the angle I remember, let's see. We'll do the door here. Okay. We'll do the door there. That works perfect. And that's the door. Perfect. And then there were steps. Yeah, that's right. More steps. These were wooden steps. Pretty sure they were there before my dad, before we lived there. I think my dad eventually remade them too. Yeah, I vaguely remember that too. Yeah, he did. Well, somebody did. I'm not sure if it was my father, but I know, again, put a lot of work into this house. But I remember, yeah, he eventually, because they had gotten rotten and old, and he felt like they weren't safe. So, kept making steps. I remember this. But I think that was after we moved in too. And let's see. We go. Yeah. I believe there was a brick. Oh, not a brick, like a piece of wood. Go that way. Remember that. Nice. I believe that was all empty there. Yeah. Remember that being empty. Anyway. There wasn't a handle on that side because the door, the walls. No, there was a banister on this side. Here. It was wooden. Got a banister right there. I want to say that's right. Yep, that looks exactly right, actually. I remember that. The door. Yep, that sounds right. Go down. I remember there was like a other grass part here, but there was a fence too, so it's kind of hard to remember all of that. Anyway. Yeah, so the door was there. This was my grandmother's door. Windows there. I think there was a window here too. Where? That window? I believe there was. I don't remember. I believe there was a window there. Wasn't big. Wasn't a big one. Small window. Oh, hi, beautiful. Don't move the camera. I'm trying to do something here. Yeah, that's right. There was a window there. This is all coming from my memory. So if I'm wrong, but this is what I remembered. That's Lilith moving the camera. So yeah, I remember that. So okay, so let me show you. This was the front of the house. Okay, this was where your Aunt Lori lived. Oh, my Aunt Lori. This was a guest of the family. This was Grandma, Ava, and Chris's house. This is where they lived for a long time. You have to walk up the steps and go in there. Go in there? Yeah, it was good times. It was a lot of fun. So then you'd go in the house. I vaguely remember that. I remember, let's see, when we entered the house, there was steps. The first thing I remember were the steps. And there was a wall. There was a wall here. Remember again, 9-year-old me. Steps. What color is the balloon? That's a blue balloon. She like, oh, your balloon. I remember this. There was a small wall here. Right? And these were the steps. that went up. Yeah. How did they go up? Wouldn't be able to see it from there. We'd be able to see it from here. Right? Sounds wrong. No? Alright, so hold on. Alright, so there was that wall there. And that looks right. Now it's making sense. Okay, so you'd enter, the door would be open, the door would be here. It would open inwards. And then there would be these steps. These steps went upstairs. That's right. Okay. There we go. Now it's making sense. There weren't that many steps there. Remember, there was kind of a wide arch, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Steps. Go up. Make one more step up here. I want to say there was a small, tiny, small box right there. How do I remember? There was a door, second door. She couldn't see it. Because there was a TV here. But I don't remember the TV. Which is so weird because it feels like it should have been a flat screen. But there were no flat screens at the time. So it must have been a big TV. But I remember it being in that wall. Not inside the wall, but like against it. Big screen TV. I remember that. I mean, it wasn't huge, but it was bigger than most. Do you remember? And one of the main reasons I do remember that is because I have memories of watching movies with my cousin and his mom on this TV. Why do you have a drum on your head? Okay. Yeah, I remember us watching movies on this TV. It was a back. Because back in the day, these TVs were very big. Yeah, big TV. The table. I vaguely remember the table. I was holding it. Something was holding it. Maybe it wasn't a table. It was something else. Yeah, my God. What was it? Like it had doors. I remember that. Doors. Yeah. And there were VHS tapes under there. And they had a painting up here. I can't remember what the painting was, but I remember there was a painting here. I just can't remember what the painting was. That might have been the nymph painting. Or there was another one. I vaguely remember of a girl with black hair sitting in grass. Yeah, that was that painting. I can't remember the name of it. I guarantee you my mom will remember it. But yeah, that's what was there. And then the door here was a door here. And this door led to the basement. Because there were steps that went up and then there were steps that went down to the basement. I remember that. Wasn't much space here though. I remember like there wasn't a whole lot of space between entering the house and this. And if you went this way, you'd get the kitchen. This way would be the living room. I remember that. So we'll start with the living room next, and then we'll go to the kitchen. So the living room, what I remember, I'll put the staircase here. Staircase. Staircase, and then she's just being crazy. Yeah, okay. The door is here. That's the door that leads outside. This would be standing in the kitchen. Yeah. And then be the door, windows, windows. Yep. Oh, being a box here. Vague. This is all very vague. None of this might have been there. I know the windows were there, but that's about it. Then why doesn't this make any sense? Towards the door and entrance. Yeah, and then turn in. Right? Door, the steps. There was a window. A big window. I remember that. Big window there. Because I remember we had the kitchen table was. This is where it stopped. Kitchen table was here. Yeah, that looks exactly right. Refrigerator was here. I remember so much, but I remember so little too. And that, yeah. Yep. And then kitchen. Okay. But that wasn't where I was going with this. That's part of it. The living room. Let's start with that. Living room looked this. It was a pretty big living room. Right? Pretty big. There was a couch here. With a couch. Big couch. That's the couch. Remember there was also a table. What was a table? There was a table here. It was a glass table. Well, not glass, but like stone. I remember that. Later on, we changed it to one that looked like tree bark. I'm not even going to attempt to draw that. But yeah, it had like tree bark for the bottom, and it was glass. I remember that. There was also another couch on this side. Remember that. Yeah, yeah, yo. There's another couch here, yes. I remember that. Now, this is where the big picture was originally. This was one picture of the guy with the blue with the black hair. And he was in the lake, and all the ladies were there. And it's like I think there's a whole story behind it. I can't remember, but I know it had to do with him uh, searching for something and them finding him. My mom knows more about it, and from my understanding, my grandfather's the one who bought it because apparently they carried that picture with them to like 2 other houses, I think, and then it just disappeared. I know it ended up in our house at one point, but I think that was after they moved in. Trying to remember, it's hard. Yeah. Anyway, that was the living room, from what I remember of it. The upstairs had. This is the next interesting part because I remember this as Chris's side of the house. So you'd go up the stairs, right? It seems right. And there were 3 rooms up here. Let's see. 3 rooms. Let's do it from that angle. Remember, keep in mind, once again, 9-year-old brain. All right. So you go up the stairs, and there'd be a wall, a very small panel here. I remember that. And then this was a bathroom. This was a bathroom. There was a small closet here, I believe. Vaguely remember that. I think it was a small. Yeah, I think it was. I think there was a small closet here. And we held like towels and stuff. Yeah, yeah. That sounds right. This was the bathroom. And then not even that far from it, there was another door. And this was Chris's room. Well, his first room. I remember that. I don't remember there being a door there. I don't think there was. I don't believe there was a door there. There was no door there. It was a dresser. There was a dresser here. And there was a dresser, and then it was his room. Remember that. And then if you went further down, you'd reach the end of the hall, which was Ava's room. Yeah. There was a bathtub on this side. The toilet was on this side. Giant mirror. Let's see. It was all rug. And yeah, that was Chris's first room. He had bunk beds. I remember that. I don't remember if. No, it wasn't bunk beds. It was a canopy bed, I think. Pretty sure it was a canopy bed. I remember his TV was on this side. Played a lot of video games on that. TV, another dresser there. We'd sit here, ready for a very, very vague remembrance of just sitting there, and he was playing the game. Remember that. Anyway, if we went further back, let's see. So we'll do it from this angle. Ava's room was pretty big. I remember it was very big, actually. And she's the only one I remember whose room this was. I don't think it ever changed. It never became anybody else's room. It didn't change. It just was always Ava's room. I remember there was a window. Big windows. Big windows. These are the front windows. And then her bed was here. Remember that. And she would read stories to Chris before going to sleep. I remember that. And on this side, right actually where the pen, you can't see it, there was a desk, like the one in my mom's living room right now, that had a shade on it. Not a shade. It's like a kind of like an old school desk. Let's look like a drawer. I wonder. It's like an old school desk, but I had all these little compartments. Let's see. We'll start it from there. My mom currently has one of these in her living room. Not the same one. I think Ava still has the old one. Anyway, there's a desk and it had a panel on the top of it that you can open and shut, kind of like an old detective's desk. This part would come up and down. Remember, there were drawers. Was that? Yeah. And then the other end. Remember that? Might have been drawers on both sides, actually. I'm thinking about it. Hard to remember. Might have been drawers on both sides. I remember we hid underneath it a couple of times. That was fun. We were goofy kids. I vaguely remember that. The wall. And the drawer. Something like that. Yeah. A lot of papers. I think this is where she did a lot of her teacher stuff. I don't remember a chair. I'm sure there was a chair, but I don't remember it. Very vague. I'm not happy with this drawing, but you get the idea. My grandmother's room was pretty simple. I'm not even going to bother with that because all it really was, I said I'm not going to bother, but I'm going to show you anyway, was you go up. All right, so this is the entrance, and all there really was a bed. And the only reason why I remember that is because I spent a lot of time on this bed when I was sick. Remember that? I just don't remember why I spent a lot of time on it when I was sick. Because I had caught pneumonia. And yeah. Really wasn't much to this room. Like I said, this room was kind of boring. I remember my cousin and I one time found one of those flyers for a help save the kids in Africa thing, or I think maybe it was a panda or something like that. One of those things. But I remember him being excited because he thought he was getting a brother. It was cute. And I remember that. Other than that, other than those four, there were three rooms upstairs, the bathroom, kitchen, the living room, That was all there was to this side of the house. The other side of the house where we moved in was different. But before I get to that, I want to do one other thing. So, if you were looking from the porch, I remember this. If you were looking from their porch, there was, from the top of the steps, I remember this vaguely. I don't know why this memory is making me draw this. So there was banister, obviously. Okay. And then there was a shed here. Big giant shed. I think they kept like garden stuff in there. And then there was also paneling for the house. Now, right between there, if you kept walking back, you'd reach the backyard. But there was a space in between here and there. Very small space. I remember that. And I got stung by a bee for the first time back here. I remember that. It's kind of sad, but I do remember. Yeah, that looks about right. Got stung by a bee. I was pissed. Thing hurt. Funny, because recently I got stung by a bee. Right there. But, yeah. That's the first time I got stung by a bee. I remember that. I remember it was always very muddy, very messy. I think we had one of the dogs would stay there a lot. I can't remember the name of those dogs, but I remember there was that space. I think we even had stuff underneath this steps, but I can't remember. Let me help you. You want to help me? She wants to help me. You want to draw with Daddy? Okay. Oh boy. Here she comes. We're going to keep drawing still a little bit longer. Say hello. Well. Okay. So yeah, that's how I was drawing. That's what I remember about that side of the house. Trying to remember the other side. See, this was my grandmother's room. This was the hallway. This was the desk in my aunt's bedroom. That was my aunt's bedroom. See? What are you doing? Why are we moving things? Oh, look. I'll get to another page. Thank you. I could have asked. All right. So, let's see. Mommy, I get. You wanna try? What do you want to draw? Play. Hold on, let me see. I'm happy. Oh, okay, then you know what? You do it. Yeah. I think that's the best we got for today. I'll come back to this later. Good episode 1.